listeners, thanks for joining in. Welcome to another HRO Today Educational Podcast. In this series, we aim to provide you the latest workforce management approaches and best practices in HR. I'm Debbie Bolla, Vice President and Editorial Director of HRO Today Magazine. Performance reviews. Love them or hate them, they are an important driver of professional growth for employees. Having a review once a calendar year sure poses some challenges. So what can organizations do in order to create an all-encompassing approach built on data, rooted in trust, and inclusive of employee feedback? Today I have an expert here with me that can answer that question and more. Rosette Cataldo is Vice President of Performance and Talent Strategies for Workhuman. Workhuman brings social recognition and gratitude to the workplace, serving 6 million employees globally and allowing managers and colleagues to celebrate each other's achievements and efforts through the Workhuman cloud platform. Rosette works closely with organizations of all sizes to help them embrace new HR technologies that impact their culture. A 25-year HR tech veteran, at Workhuman, she works closely with global talent leaders to design and adopt a continuous performance development approach to build cultures rooted in gratitude and feedback. Rosette is considered an expert in the evolving landscape of continuous performance management redesign. She has worked with organizations including Dell, IBM, NCR, Dun & Bradstreet, and Patagonia to help them transition to a culture where continuous feedback, agile goals, and ongoing human connections lead to measurable business outcomes like increased engagement and higher productivity. Thanks for being with me today, Rosette. What are some of the challenges and benefits of annual performance reviews?
Well, hello, Debbie, and thank you so much for having me today. Ooh, that's a loaded question. There are a tremendous amount of challenges, and the good news is that the challenges can easily be overcome by just shifting the approach that organizations take to the annual review. I think the first thing to acknowledge before I get into the challenges is that the annual review is still alive and kicking. So often we have heard that people are going to get rid of it and blow it up and you'll never see it again. The reality is that was true about 3, 4, 5 years ago, and there's been a pendulum shift back. But the challenges really come into people feeling as though it's daunting. It takes a lot of time to prepare. And that is the case, but that can be overcome if you don't look at it as a calendared event. So when you look at it as a calendared event and you start to think about, I have this big event happening on one day, it's really easy to say, all right, how many employees do I have? How much time does it take? And we saw data even as back as 2014 where, Adobe was saying it took 80,000 hours for 11,000 employees to do the process. So that was one of the big challenges was there wasn't much data to leverage, so it felt Herculean. But the good news is when you go to continuous performance and you start to collect data on the other 364 days, the annual process can become easier. The other challenges outside of the time it takes, and it always takes some time because we want people to be thoughtful and reflective and approach this with coaching, is that you want to make sure that the feel of the annual assessment isn't felt by the employee as it's for the company, but it's really for me, the employee. And that is super hard to do. And that really comes down to, are the questions you're asking, are the insights you're gleaning, is the data you're collecting feel more about me and helping me grow, or is it about the company collecting some data so it sits in my permanent record and one day it's going to come back to potentially haunt me? Other challenges that I talk to clients and talent leaders around the world about is, how do we make it not feel like it's all the opinion of one person? Whenever you have any process that is solely the opinion of one person, you open yourself for bias. It's just innate in the reality that one voice, one set of eyes, one set of ears doesn't give you all of the robustness and really remove you from your point of view. So the challenge is that when you have an annual process and you rely solely on the opinion of the manager, you open up that opportunity for bias. But once again, with every challenge, you can actually find a way to make it be a positive. And what organizations are doing in this world of continuous is making sure that in the other 364 days of engaging the employee with a lot of different people, that you're collecting insights from those people so the manager can easily reflect and look at those insights when it is time to assess. And then the last big challenge that I would say with the annual process is that oftentimes employees walk away feeling that they were taken off guard. That was a surprise. And managers feeling that it was overwhelming, that these conversations are hard. I felt like I was up against the wall to rate someone or to give them something to hold on to, good or bad. With all these challenges, we see that they can easily be overcome, but you have to approach the annual process differently. And that's really what I do at Workhuman every day, is help organizations think differently about creating a much more human-centric approach to performance in the annual review and how to overcome all those challenges I just made note of.
So what are some steps HR can take to complement the annual performance review?
Well, definitely the first steps that we need to do is start to think about that the annual is just a moment in time in which you are asking the employee and asking the manager to pause, reflect, and look forward. So once again, the first thing that HR can do is to create a mindset where this is not the end-all, be-all. It is a moment in time that you should have been using all of the work that you've been doing throughout the year, the moments in which you engaged with all your colleagues, and having agile goals that get opened and closed. So really changing the mindset that it's not about the annual, it's about the day-to-day. It's about making sure that you have given permission where people can, along the journey of every day, every week, every month, feel as though that they are able to give feedback and ask for feedback. And oftentimes, HR and HR leaders, and I've even seen CHROs and head of talent deliberately make videos, deliberately send messages to say, we want to support you every day in your growth and in your performance, and we want to build a culture here. And yes, there'll be an annual review, and yes, there'll be a moment in time where there may be an assessment and maybe even a rating, but we're more focused on the day-to-day rituals and practices, and we want to create a culture of feedback. And a culture of feedback starts with making sure that people feel comfortable in engaging with each other, that people feel trusted, that people feel as though they have that psychological safety. And what we know and what our Workhuman IQ team has found in looking at all the data of all of our clients around the world is that when employees check in with their manager, which is really just a deliberate one-on-one meeting, and we still believe even if it's over the phone or over Zoom, eye contact is the killer app, the trust can increase by more than 2x when you are meeting with your manager regularly. So what HR needs to do, and what I hope many HR listeners are doing today, is saying, time out. We may have an annual review. We know there are many challenges, but if we create a culture where people feel as though they're having check-ins ongoingly with their manager or anyone, they're able to ask for feedback. They're able to give feedback. They're able to be recognized for the work that they're doing, and that they're able to create and close their own goals. Then by the time you have that day on the calendar or that 1 month-long event of annual performance reviews, not only do you have the data that's necessary to remove all that time that I talked about at the beginning that often feels daunting, but I have an employee that feels as though they've established a relationship with their manager, and their manager has established a relationship with the employee so that they can have a very productive conversation rooted in trust and psychological safety and really a feeling that we're in it together. So those are many of the things that HR can do at any time throughout the year to complement the annual performance review.
So by doing these things, what are some results organizations will experience?
Well, definitely one of the biggest results that I've seen is the sentiment to the process and the feeling that, oh, wait, it's not really just about HR collecting data, so I maybe get a raise or maybe don't, but it's really about helping me grow and helping me flourish and helping me perform and listening to my career aspirations is the number one thing. So I would say employee sentiment and their reaction to the process, their feeling going into the meeting, their feeling that they're being heard. We see all the time that shows up in engagement surveys and in net promoter score increase, and really just feeling like, okay, we're all in it together and it's not just about that one day. But we also have it feel as though it's asking me to be part of building a culture. And this is something that most HR professionals and CHROs that I have the opportunity to work with, kind of pause and really think, wow, I never think about my performance management or my performance development process, which has an annual assessment component in it. And like I said, most organizations still have that. Really pull back and say, wait, I can look at this as a way to create culture. And when you start to think of it like that, then you really start to see that some of the results are that people feel as though that they have their fingerprints on creating this culture, that they have a responsibility to each other to share their goals when they're asking for feedback, or be on the lookout for when people live their values and recognize each other, or to say, you know what, I haven't connected with my manager in a while. I'm going to proactively create a check-in. I'm not going to wait for my manager to come to me. Or I'm on a new project, or I'm on a new team, and I see where I can give someone a little feedback that maybe they didn't see something that they did that I saw. And by sharing some insights with them in the form of feedback will help them grow. So this is all that I see happening when you still keep an annual review. You change the mindset around it, and you start to empower people with permission and making them feel as though you're a critical piece of the puzzle, and it's not something that happens to you, but something that happens with you and for you. And that's really shifting cultures of all sizes around the world when people get in that mindset, and then they realize, all right, that's a mindset shift, but then I need to start thinking about I have to empower and educate and teach people a skill set. How do you have a productive check-in? How do you give feedback? And then, of course, finding a tool set that doesn't feel built for the company, but more so built for the employee, that feels light touch, that feels agile, that feels in the flow of work. So those are some of the results you can obtain when you start to pivot and you implement some of the changes I just made note of and start to think of it as an all-inclusive process, not just an event.
So how can managers in HR leverage the feedback they collect over the year through this continuous performance development strategy and put it into action?
Well, that's fantastic. And I love how you said both manager and HR, because it really is an and not an or. And for so long, all your listeners who are part of the HR community felt as though performance management, performance development was on their shoulders. And the reality is it's not just on their shoulders, it's on the manager's shoulders, and dare I say it's even on the employee's shoulders. But the first thing I think is to really not be shy to ask for feedback. And when you ask for it, reflect on it. And then think about, how can I take this feedback and grow? Grow personally, grow to support and serve my team, and then go in support of the culture and all of the people I work with and I come in contact with. So if you think about it, the feedback that's collected in this type of continuous performance development strategy is feedback on myself. So I want to have an open door, and I want to ask openly for it, and I want people to feel as though they can proactively give it to me at any time, regardless if I'm an employee, a manager, or HR, or anybody. It's feedback on the process, understanding if the process is working. I have recently participated in a webinar where IBM spoke about their transformation of culture by focusing on performance development, and they talked about gathering feedback, not just in looking at the feedback of the individual employees and the managers, but on process itself through surveys. So you start to have a plethora of information, and then you start to be able to say, gee, I'm seeing that feedback's coming in our Overwhelmingly, we need to revamp and think differently, or to educate people on how to do something, or on how we ask people to engage with a tool. Or we're seeing lots of feedback where people are just needing greater skills as it relates to being mindful, or how to have a productive meeting, or how to be resilient. And then that can affect your other talent strategies. So this feedback that's being collected on the manager level, on the HR level, on the individual level, should be used for personal growth, professional development, and to help define future talent strategies. And the wise companies are paying attention to this and saying, you know what, all of this great feedback is helpful and useful. We just need to find ways to start to help it foster and flow. And we need to allow it to be a full spectrum of feedback, not just negative or developmental or instructional, but also positive, so we know what we need to continue to do and what we need to continue to celebrate, and not just what we need to calibrate. All that can come when you look to revamp your continuous performance development strategy and your annual performance process.
Those are some great points, Rosette, about getting much more from your performance management process. Until next time, listeners, I'm Debbie Bolla.